Are you ready to reopen? Are you ready for the economy and the businesses to reopen? I certainly am. I'm ready for my barber shop to be open. I'm ready to see sports. I'm ready to hit the Las Vegas casinos. Okay, I'm not ready to hit the Las Vegas casinos. I don't really want to go on an airplane, be in a crowded place, but I'm certainly ready to reopen. Hi, I'm Dr. Bill Conerly, talking about a business guide for reopening. And I'm going to use the word reopen for those businesses that have been closed and are now reopening, but also for those businesses that have had to downsize a little bit. Their volume of activity is not where it should be, not where it normally is, but they're ready to take off. For instance, I was driving not far from my home the other day past a tire shop. And it was open because car repairs are an important part, an essential part of but there were not a lot of cars in front of the tire shop, because if you're not driving, you don't know that you need new tires. Your tires aren't going flat. People will eventually go back to work, and maybe the car won't start. They get a jump, and then they find the tires are flat. So this tire shop is going to be busy again, even though it never really closed. As I am in this presentation talking about reopening, keep in mind that I'm talking not only about reopening, but about the resurgence of business. Let me show you what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to talk about phases of reopening, laying the groundwork now before you get to that place, and then the challenges you're going to face in the reopening. There'll be adjustments necessary along the way, and then questions and answers. And for questions and answers, we're going to do that by, you will be typing on your keyboard. And if you move your cursor down to the bottom of the Zoom screen, you will see some pop-ups, and one of them says Q&A, which stands for question and answer. You can even type it now. Though I don't know why you'd want to start asking questions when you don't even know what I'm going to cover. But anyway, there's that opportunity. As I show some slides, you'll see my smiling face superimposed on it. That is actually a separate window, and you can drag it out of the way. You can even close it entirely, but why don't you want to look at my face? Don't understand that at all. And then the last thing is there's a chat function here. You can talk among yourselves. I'm not going to be monitoring the chat as we go because I'm busy. I got a lot of things to do. I've got technology to work with and some substance to ponder. But you can chat with your fellow participants in this webinar. But the chat is not confidential, so don't say any. In fact, I'll be able to look at the comments you make, so you want to be cautious not to do anything that's a little bit too wild and crazy. So the first topic I want to talk about is phases of reopening, and I know what we want. What we want is a bell to ring. And the bell would mean all clear, but we're not going to get that, that bell, because we're not going to get a clear reopening. It's going to happen in stages, a little bit at a time. Italy is planning on reopening. In my own state of Oregon, the non-emergency medical sector is opening. So there'll be a little bit at a time. And then there's going to be a reevaluation, maybe in 14 days. 14 days seems to be the number people are throwing around for how long it takes for us to know whether a certain phase is okay or we need to go backwards. And we will be monitoring the government officials, plus we individuals will be monitoring cases. And we will either continue to ease up more reopening phases, or we may go backwards if the caseload gets out of hand. So one of the things that is very important to do is, hold on, I got just by a little bit of chat. One of the things that we want to do is monitor cases. And I'm going to show you here an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, let's change that. This is data on US new cases. And I think that we are probably seeing a downward trend here. So it's not really, really sharp, certainly a lot worse than the peak, but I think we're on the improving path. But one of the things that I want to emphasize is that all of the changes, all of the reopening will be local, either state by state or in some cases city or metropolitan area. Even if it's an order of a governor, the governor may recognize that one part of a state is ready to reopen, but another part is not. So what you'll want to do is monitor local statistics. And I'm going to show you an example here of local statistics. I'm showing you Oregon because that's my home state, not because Oregon is particularly important. But once again, you can see that oops, I'm not getting that. Here we go. I think we went too far. I'm sorry, got a little ahead of myself. Here we go, Oregon. And what we have is a clear downward trend here, maybe not as low as we want. So when we're looking at local statistics, new cases is one, hospitalizations and deaths are other statistics we'll be looking at. The public health authorities will, in addition to these cases, be looking at capacity. Do we have hospital capacity? How many hospital beds are in use, ICU beds in use, ventilators, and how much room do we have for a secondary surge? The specific issues that will be looked at will vary a little bit from one place to another, but cases and capacity for hospitalizations and also capacity for testing and tracing. We have a lot of talk about it. It seemed to work in South Korea. I am doubtful that we're going to use that as a major barrier to reopening because I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Now, some of you are doing business in multiple areas, different states, different metropolitan areas. I would suggest you set up a dashboard, get statistics for all of your markets. Some of them will probably open before others, and keep an eye on what's going on, or expect your local managers to do that. And to get the statistics, well, they're all over the internet, but I want to give a thumbs up to the editors, the volunteer editors at Wikipedia. They've set up COVID-19 pages for many states and metropolitan areas, downloading the data so that you can copy and paste it into a spreadsheet. I double checked and yep, they're getting the numbers right. So set up your own dashboards for the areas that you're in. And keep in mind that the reopening, though we hope it will be more and more and more, it can go backwards. And a good understanding of that comes from what we saw during the Spanish flu a little over 100 years ago. What we saw, let me clear the annotations, clear all drawings there. What we saw back in those days, nobody around here much remembers it, is we had an outbreak in July of 1918. And then the worst was October and November of 1918. And then 4 months later, March, we had another outbreak. And this is what the public health authorities are worried about, that if we open up too much, we'll get a resurgence and we will test the capacity of our system, of our hospitals, and testing ability. So the direction of change is not at all certain. And as a result, we're going to be wondering exactly what we should do. So let's return to the overall outline here. And reminder, phases of reopening is going to be 14 days or so, and then evaluate, and another stage, and another stage, and another stage. So we won't have full clarity for quite a while, and we're not going to have an all clear for quite a while. So the next element in today's presentation is laying the groundwork. As is so often the case, a business does better if they plan and prepare. And even if your organization is closed, laying the groundwork makes a lot of sense right now. Let's go through the list of what you want to do to lay the groundwork. Monitoring the caseloads, as we just discussed, is important. Staying in touch with customers. This is a deep, deep insight. You are taking precious minutes from your day to hear somebody say, stay in touch with your customers, which is advice for any condition. COVID, no COVID, boom, bust, staying in touch with your customers is good. But it is more important now than ever before. Because when things get really out of whack, chaotic, different, you can't count on people coming back. So being in touch with your customers, how are they feeling? Are they going to be inclined to come back to your business? Anything, and not only staying in touch, but reminding them that you exist. They may wonder, oh, where did I used to go to get my fingernails done? I don't remember, as you can tell, haven't had my nails done in let's just say quite a while. So staying in touch with your customers. You want to stay in touch with your employees that you have laid off or furloughed. And this is really, really important. Those of you who have lower paid employees may find that some of them are very happy not working. And this is one of the odd parts of our stimulus package, is there as a bonus for unemployment. And let me work you through some arithmetic here. I'm an economist. People expect economists to be boring, and sometimes I don't meet their expectations until I turn to numbers. So let me hit you with some numbers. Let's say somebody's making 20 bucks an hour. That would be $40,000 a year, full-time work. So on a weekly basis, 20 bucks an hour times 40, I'm not really good with numbers, but I think it's $800 a week. So person's used to $800 a week, gets laid off, unemployment insurance is there. The specific formula varies from state to state, but the average is a payment of about half of salary. So the person who had been earning $800 a week is getting $400 a week. Well, that's tough. But Congress wanted people to pay the bills, so they said everybody getting unemployment will get whatever the state formula is, in this case, the 400, plus 600 additional, So $400, the regular formula, plus 600 is $1,000. Here is a person who has been making $800 a week working and is now collecting $1,000 a week not working. You know, if you call that person up and say, hey, Joe, good news for you. I want you to come back to work. Joe may not think that's good news. I mean, $800 for working or $1,000 for not working, some people are going to be tough. Some people will come back. Some people like the social aspects of working both with customers and employees. Some people like the sense of accomplishment from working. Some people have a strong ethical sense that they should work rather than collect unemployment insurance. So the variety is going to be different, and your challenge now during the downtime is to understand your employees. And some of them may have moved back to Connecticut to take care of elderly parents. They may not even be around. They may have taken another job. You've seen ads, Amazon and grocery stores trying to hire. They may have hired the people that you laid off. So be in touch with your employees and just understand where they are. It'll also make them feel better about you as a boss. The third element is to stay in touch with your suppliers. And I think you've got the message here, so I'm going to stop sharing that. Staying in touch with suppliers. So the first thing we think about is a restaurant, and they get deliveries of fish, and they get deliveries of lettuce and paper products. So some of our supply chains have been challenged by the bug. We have some meat packing plants, but even aside from the food chain, there are businesses that are shutting down factories temporarily because they had an outbreak of COVID-19 in there. So the supplies that you rely on may not be coming through as smoothly. And I tell you, everybody who's selling you products when you're open will welcome your phone call when you're closed. And it's not just stuff. I say suppliers, but that refers to service suppliers. So let's say you're a service business, say a real estate broker, and you're not closing a lot of deals right now. But when the time comes, you're going to need some other service providers in order to satisfy your customers when they're there. Title insurance, mortgage brokers. So it's worth checking out what's going on with your suppliers, whether you're in a physical commodity business or a service business. And finally, think through your safety and sanitation. I'm going to use safety and sanitation for how you keep people distant from each other and how you clean surfaces. There are a number of steps, and think through what you're going to be doing when that happens. So that's the laying the groundwork stage. And I think that the laying the groundwork stage will make more sense as we talk about reopening challenges, because they relate very closely to that. So you're going to have reopening challenges with customers, employees, suppliers, and operations. And these are challenges you've dealt with before. Going to be a little bit different, a little twist, but if you're running a business, you've dealt with these. But let me roll through this, and then I want to come and do a little bit more of a summary. Customer problems come in two forms: too many and too few. What? Too many customers? I don't hear very many of my consulting clients saying, Bill, I've got too many customers. But there's pent-up demand. When my barbershop reopens, there are going to be a lot of people saying, hey, time for a haircut. What do you do when you have more people coming in than you can handle? And it's not just barbershop, that's the obvious one. I've heard, oh, and this is bad news. If it applies to you, you've already heard it, and I'm not here to talk about reopening with a lot of bad news, but I heard that in some states, liquor stores are closed. Ooh, sends a chill up and down the spine. Well, what do you do if nobody's been able to booze and you open on day one? It could be a little bit chaotic as the barbershop. I would encourage you to think through, who are my most valuable customers? Who are my most valuable customers? Let's take a beauty salon. Some people come in every 3 weeks, get a little trim and dye or whatever they do. And other people come in every 6 weeks. Which of those customers is more valuable to you? The every 3-week customer or the every 6-week customer? One of them, over the course of a year, sends twice as much revenue your way. So find a way to take care of your very best customers. Not only do they provide you with more revenue, but they probably feel the need for a haircut more than that person who goes 6 weeks and, oh, I can go do another month or two. And there are some ways you can do that. One would be, if you're an appointment-oriented business, call those good customers before you reopen, before you're taking calls from the public. Reach out to your best customers. If you can identify them, maybe you have a pre-opening. So if you're going to open on May 5th, to the general public, maybe on May 4th, your best customers get to come into the shop, sort of the pre-sale event. Nordstrom's is famous for that kind of things. But think about how you prioritize if you're going to have too many customers. Now, too few customers is a more widespread problem. And dealing with too few begins with that laying the groundwork phase. Remind them that you exist, because in a month's time, people can forget not only where they get their fingernails clipped, but where they buy concrete anchor bolts, or who is the best person for water hammer arresters. I don't know. Your customers may have forgotten. So you need to remind them, and anything you can do ahead of time will help. When you actually reopen, if it's a drive-by kind of situation, signage, email, advertising, press releases to the local business make a lot of sense. Let's go back and look at the screen again. And okay, we've got reopening with customers. Let's talk about employees. As I already mentioned, some of your low-wage employees may not want to come back. Some of them will have found other jobs, and these people may not, I won't say lie to you, but they may not want to share all the information that they've got. All right. So I've been working at one store, and then got laid off, and an opportunity arose someplace else. Am I going to tell the guy who laid me off that I've got another job and don't call me? Why should I do that? The new job might not work out. Maybe I won't like the company. Maybe the boss won't like me. So I just keep it quiet. I'm not saying everybody's going to do this, but some people will do that. So you will have a challenge with employees on opening day. You're also going to have a challenge with suppliers. There are, as I mentioned, supply chain problems popping up, even if they say they can deliver on opening day, they may not be able to. And service providers may have said, oh, gee, our business is down. We're going to lay off people. And can they dial back up as you need them to dial back up? They're going to have the same problems with employees that you're having. Operations. Let's talk about operations a little bit. Safety and sanitation is something that will be different, and you'll have to explain it, and you'll have to remind them. It won't be second nature to your employees to do as much distancing and as much sanitation as you need. And this could be a make or break issue for your business. So give that highest priority. Use of computers and equipment. Your employees know how to do it, but will they forget? Was there an oddity that they're going to miss just because they've been away for a while? And are they going to follow the proper procedures? Let me talk a little bit more detail about one of those challenges. And I'm going to give you a story from my life outside of the economics world. I'm not just a business consultant. In my spare time, I race sailboats. This picture was taken a while back on the Snake River, and I'm sailing my boat with two other people. The woman in the middle had at that time been sailing with me for about 20 years, and we were really in sync. We knew what each person was, what each other was going to do on the boat, just really, really well. Never missed a beat. But the third person, they would come and go, sort of stay and sail with us for a year and then move off, get their own boat, or life would get in the way. And so I was used to training new people. And I am really, really good at the early stages of somebody coming up to speed. I'm sympathetic. I know they make mistakes. I've seen all the mistakes that people can make. So I'm a really good coach early on. And when they are really, really experienced, yeah, I'm pretty good too, because we're in sync. The difficulty for me is the middle ground, where a person has enough experience that the person has done the job right time and time and time again, but isn't at that 10 or 20-year level of experience. And something will come up, and they'll have a little brain freeze, or maybe it'll be a tense situation. So I'm sailing on this river. It's really, really windy, and we have to do a maneuver we sailors call a jibe, where you change the direction of the boat, the boom swings across, and with a lot of force. And if somebody is not doing the job exactly right, you end up turning the boat. And I'm showing you this picture because it was taken about 5 minutes before we went swimming. We turned the boat upside down. We were in the water because I wasn't coaching as well as I should have. So you're going to have that challenge when you get back open. You're going to have some people who are not quite ready. They're good people. They're good workers. They know what to do, but they're rusty. That's probably the best way to think of it, is rusty. So let's take all of these reopening challenges together. You've got customers, you've got employees, you've got suppliers, you've got operations issues, and you've dealt with all of these before. You're a seasoned manager, but you know what? You have not dealt with all of these all at once like you're going to deal with them when you reopen. It's going to be chaos. And maybe it's not going to be your experience. Maybe you'll have a smooth opening. I don't think so, though. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to have multiple challenges when you are there, ready to reopen. And let me tell you the form of the guarantee. I will refund. If I'm wrong and you have a smooth reopening, I'll refund what you paid for this webinar, which was, of course, free. The next thing I want to do is go back to, let's go back here to where we are. We're getting ready for questions and answers, so you can be starting to think about that. And, but I want to talk about adjustments after reopening, because you'll find that there may be further easing of restrictions or a re-tightening of restrictions. So you're going to want to monitor caseloads. Employees who've come back, you've gotten through the opening, reopening, you're a couple of weeks in, and you're going to have some employees saying, you know, this job isn't as much fun as I remembered. That unemployment insurance was pretty dang good. Your supplier, and that they're stressed dealing with you, and many other businesses are reopening and they were ready for opening day, but it's going to be a challenge. Your operations, and let me mention the safety and sanitation stuff, it is really hard to impress people enough that they keep doing it right after the crisis is over. So I use the word crisis. You might use the word chaos because everything is different. And before the coronavirus, things were stable. We did not think they were stable. In fact, we did not know in January of 2020, we did not know that we did not know that 2019 was the good old days. Things have changed so much. But what happens in a chaotic, high change environment is old relationships are easy to break. It's a challenge for me to break a relationship with a business I've been doing work with. But everything's changed. That's an excuse. If I was ever inclined to change the relationship, this is the time to do it. And that's customers, that's employees, that's suppliers. So think that everything is fluid. All the old relationships are tenuous. They're not completely broken, but they're tenuous. This is going to be a challenge as you go through the environment. And I think that you'll have that the economy will have many winners and many losers. The businesses that don't stay on top of their customers, number one, their employees, their suppliers, are going to lose out to those who are adjusting and understand that this is a little bit of a chaotic environment. So what we've been doing today is talking about the phases of reopening. Reopening will happen in phases. Today, before the reopening or re-expansion, it is time to lay the groundwork, and you're going to face challenges when that happens. Anticipating those challenges will help you very much, and then you'll want to make adjustments after reopening. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book called The Flexible Stance. And the point of the book was that the economy is hard to predict. Technology is hard to predict. Social attitudes, government, and competition are all hard to predict. I should have added coronaviruses are hard to predict. Sorry, I missed that one. But the point of the book is that businesses need to be ready to go forward. They need to be ready to go backward, and they maybe need to be ready to change direction in a 90-degree turn, neither forward nor backwards, but just different. And the businesses that thrive are going to be those that are most flexible, most adaptable to deal with the changing situation. Well, I'm going to take questions, maybe give some answers or two, depending on how nice you guys are. And then I'm going to close with a short story from what I have seen in the past about businesses in an unusual situation. So here we go. We got some questions from Anonymous, embarrassed to talk about it. Actually, I think it's probably somebody who just signed in differently. So let me read this. What can we expect the delaying the spread of COVID-19 in countries that we import and export sectors? Should we expect that as the rest of the world catches up with COVID-19, trading agreements change? Well, let me deal with that in two parts. If another country is important to you, either because you export to them or import from them, monitor what's going on in those countries. You can get caseload data the same way there. And then, are trading agreements going to change? Boy, that is a good question. And one of the distinguishing characteristics of the Trump administration has been throwing trading relationships into turmoil, topsy-turvy. And I don't know where we're going to end up after that. The president does have an inclination to not like international trade very much, doesn't like imports, wouldn't mind exporting. But I think that anything is possible in this. I would prefer that we get a good round of global kumbaya and give each other a hug, or at least a virtual hug. But I think we're going to have continued turmoil in international trade. Next question, what industries are likely to come out on top? Well, I'll tell you the biggest winner without a doubt. Nobody questions this. The biggest winner are dogs. The owners are around all day and they get walks over and over. Dogs are the biggest winner. Amazon is obviously doing well. Online commerce in general, we're doing online commerce and it's grown in two ways. One is we're buying more goods, different types of goods. So I never before this would have bought socks online, but I am wearing, no, actually not today. I'm wearing the dirty socks, but my clean socks waiting for me, I bought online. Never done that before, but you know, I can't go to a store and I needed socks. So we're buying things that we had never previously bought online. And people who had not previously bought online are now buying online. The people who are less tech savvy are now buying online. So I think the online thing, and I'm not sure we're going to go any place that we wouldn't have gone already, but the changes in online retail market share, we probably did 5 or 10 years worth of progress in the last 2 months. So I think that's going to be a big change. I think on the downside, maybe travel, but a lot of people are increasingly, and this is like a 10-year trend, we think of it as millennials, but also applies to boomers, more into experience than stuff. I don't need more stuff. I got lots of stuff. I don't need another car. I don't, well, I could always use another boat, but I don't need more stuff, but I like experiences. But how do you have experiences without being in a crowded environment? That'll be a challenge. And if you can figure that out, I think you're going to be in good shape. A question from Jesse. How would you say reopening of the service industry that have continued to work remotely will differ? And are there any different focus points from places that have been more restricted? Well, this experience is going to change what our attitude is about remote work. And I think it's going to change that forever. Some people like it, some people don't. Most people, pretty much everybody, okay, not everybody I've talked to, like the no commute. The average round trip commute in this country is about an hour. And you say to somebody, how would you like a free hour? That sounds pretty good. But there's a lot to be said for being in the office. So what we are seeing, and this is something that has happened, is sort of a change in my attitudes as I progressed through my career. I used to put people in categories. This person is like, this group of people are like this, and these people are like that. But now I see a broad diversity, a rainbow. Now I won't go there, but a broad diversity of character types, people, their preferences. And so we're going to see some people saying, hey, I like this, I want to do it all the time. Others people saying, hey, I kind of like it, like to do it occasionally. And a number of managers are saying, oh, this works. This not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Some managers thought working at home would be shirking at home. They didn't understand how much people can waste time at the office. So that's what I think is going on there. Has anyone projected which market segments will rebound fastest? For example, if I go to my favorite restaurant as soon as it opens up, I will not likely buy 2 or 3 meals to make up for those weeks that I missed. Other markets may have pent-up demand that creates a big long-term recovery bounce. Can you identify any of these? The pent-up demand. Yeah, you'd want to be talking products, not services. So there's pent-up demand for haircuts, but I'm not going to go in and buy 2 haircuts. So it would probably be products. Might be some on the disposable side. Food, of course, food and drink has been available. But, I think that like car sales are way down, but I'm not sure that people to buy more cars. They'll say, okay, I got along with it. You may see a little surge because some of the would-be March and April car buyers become June and July car buyers, plus the normal June and July car buyers. I guess I'd have to say durable products would have the most of that kind of pent-up demand rather than ongoing stuff. And of course, what we stocked up on is going to be soft in demand. When this is all over, we're going to have plenty of toilet paper. And I think sales of new toilet paper going to go down. Another question. Joe, good to hear from you. Business interruption insurance, federal assistance programs, your intel. On the private insurance side, business interruption and other deals in general, the lawyers are really going to make out, okay, who's benefiting? Let's say the lawyers. There have been force majeure clauses in many contracts, and that is a concept that we understand, but it's subject to litigation. So I think there's going to be a lot of disputes about that. Federal assistance programs, I think maybe one more. When we go through a couple of rounds of easing, the economy, I think, will turn up. And I think the third quarter, the quarter starting July, is going to look definitely better than the second quarter. But the monthly numbers, I think by August and September, will be looking up. And at that point, we stop getting any further federal assistance programs. That's a political forecast by a guy trained in economics. So take that with a grain of salt. Another question, reopening challenges for franchise dental offices in Oregon. Should we open first for our dental hygiene customers? I would recommend opening as soon as you can safely do it, because there is a pent-up demand for dental work, and you may very well be able to get somebody into your office who could not get into their first choice if you're not their first choice. So you may do that, but safety would of course come first. Rick asks, the steps for a business to lay the groundwork for reopening makes a lot of sense. In your opinion, what is a city's or an economic development organization's role in laying groundwork? And what type of groundwork should these type of organizations focus on to help businesses to reestablish and open? Interesting question. I understand that our public officials are weighing different issues, and we often think of it as health versus the economy, but it's actually health in one form versus health in another, because a weak economy is not good for health. And the lockdowns have led to an increase in other deaths. Non-COVID deaths are up because of this. Some of this is not government rules, it's personal fear. I've been in touch with a couple of people who have a lot of experience with emergency rooms. They're not seeing as many heart attacks and strokes as they normally do. Are people not getting heart attacks because of COVID? No, they're not going into the emergency room when they have symptoms. And that is bad. And okay, I'm not a doctor, but let me say, if you have chest pain or symptoms of stroke, go into the emergency room. It'll be well worthwhile. But city officials, the clearer the guidance you can give. I've often said that on regulations, the regulations themselves are not the worst part for business. The uncertainty about what the regulations are, am I in compliance, am I not in compliance? So I think helping to clarify what's okay and what's not okay would be the best advice there. Next question is from Steve. Any comments with the cause and effect of too early opening versus waiting to later days? Well, I think I just covered that. And right now, I think I can't make a blanket about the whole country because conditions vary, but I think that we've had too much caution and general, and that there's been a recognition that COVID is dangerous, but not a complete recognition of the non-COVID health challenges associated with unemployment and poverty. How are, Randy, how are inventories in general? I see that in some areas they are soft, in other areas they're, and the anecdotes I pick up, in some areas they're tight, in some areas they're loose. The long run trend is we had declining inventory to sales ratio in the United States. It shot up in the 2008 recession and then kind of went down, but has been edging up. Okay, the hand motion isn't working real well. But I have been surprised the last 3 years that inventories have been higher. I think the just-in-time inventory experience led many companies to say, oh, we didn't have enough margin. And when the tsunami hit in Japan, when the floods in Thailand happened, when the railroads had under capacity, there were problems. And I think there's maybe been a re-evaluation of thinking. But I was talking with a consulting client this morning, and let me tell you that the challenges a business has managing inventory in this situation. So this company's orders were down a little bit, not a surprise. And I'm like, well, gee, you sell to dealers. Were the dealers keeping less inventory, or were they getting fewer orders from their customers? That's really important. It could just be nervous dealers leading this company to have fewer orders, or it could be the final sales, or it could be disruptions because some other's plant is shut down because of the disease. So we've got a lot of economic turmoil and three different factors there. So I think managing inventories is one of the biggest problems that a business faces now. And inventories can be very destabilizing. So I would watch them very, very carefully. Steve, date. I haven't dated since I got married. What is, maybe that's a date of when we reopen. It's going to be localized. Here in Oregon, I think it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, the first stage. Actually, the second stage, because we already have health, but I think you need to keep track locally. What is your definition of the new normal? I'm going to punt on that one. Is that Ollie? What is the best way to recoup the extra expense of sanitation supplies, gowns, smocks, etc.? COVID-19 surcharge or raise prices? I like the COVID-19 surcharge. Consumers feel more comfortable if they have a reason for the price increase, even if it's got a high bogosity factor, and many price increases do. Trucking companies had fuel surcharges even after, in fact, at one time the fuel surcharge was in excess of their fuel expense, their total fuel expense. So I would call it a COVID-19 surcharge. But if you do that, you have to show them that you're actually doing the COVID-19 stuff. You have to have people out there cleaning a lot to help justify it. Moving down on questions, and we'll be done in a few minutes here. If you're antsy to go, but you want to wait for the story, wait for the story. Bill, what changes do you foresee in residential real estate and in commercial real estate? Tony, residential real estate, the potential buyers, a few of them got knocked off of the ability to be buyers. So we don't think of the lowest paid people as likely buyers of homes, waiters, hotel maids, but we do have families where that's a second income, and that second income makes the difference between qualifying and not qualifying. So some of those people who lost their jobs, and even if they're getting unemployment isn't the same thing as having a job for qualification. I think, I'm not positive on that. And then there are the middle class, the hotel manager out of work, maybe was going to buy a car, buy a house, maybe not. So we're going to lose some, but not. I think that we'll lose a fairly small fraction. Let me just take a wild guess, 10 or 15% of the would-be buyers backing out and other people stepping in. We may also find those people who have been living in an apartment wondering, should I buy a house? Maybe yeah, maybe no. And they've been working from home, so they've got their jobs, they've got the income, and now they're thinking, gee, do we want to live in an apartment building, take a common elevator with everybody else, be in a crowded city, which had a lot of energy and life, but maybe it's time to move to the suburbs. So I think that not like right away in July, but there may be a trend towards moving there. So basically residential real estate is going to bounce back. And commercial real estate is going to be a mixture. Certainly the retail sector, this is accentuating problems both for restaurant tenants and stores, non-grocery stores, but they had a challenge anyway. I think that owner-occupied industrial and office is going to be a great opportunity. Many businesses are renting space, but they would like to own their property. And now with interest rates low, I think banks will be very eager to make owner-occupied non-residential real estate loans. So I'm looking for a resurgence in that kind of activity. Samuel asks, after the economy goes through phases, should we expect inventory investments to be higher in a certain sector? As companies cut back on their inventory. And sometimes they cut back on their inventory because their actual sales are down. And sometimes they cut back on the inventory because it's a cautious sale. Sometimes get a bullwhip effect. The economy turns up, and so let's take an example that I used in my first book, Bizonomics. And if you don't have a copy of Bizonomics, I have one word for you: Amazon. Anyway, let's say that the liquor store has increased sales. The liquor store owner says, oh, my sales are up. I need to replace what I sold. And if we're back in the environment of high sales, I need to carry more inventory on average. So I need to increase my order for increased sales plus carrying a little more inventory. Calls up the wholesaler. The wholesaler is saying the same thing: more sales. And the wholesaler says, I gotta carry more inventory as well. The factory says, oh yeah, I need to carry more, I need to produce more, and maybe they're at a production. So there'll be some bottlenecks as the economy moves up. Now, I think that we're a year away from that. I think we're a vaccine away from that. We get a vaccine out there, then I think that inventories will be insufficient and there'll be a real press to produce more and get that out there. And then Tony, Tony. How concerning is the national debt? Somebody has to ask the question. You know, I don't like it. And I think at some point the chickens are going to come home to roost. What I think we're seeing, and I'm looking out 3 to 5 years, I think that we'll see that we've put a lot of money into the economy through fiscal stimulus, monetary easing, quantitative easing, and we have less production. And inflation is classically defined as too many dollars chasing too few goods. We've got the too many dollars, and with production taking a hit this year, too few goods, I think we're going to have some inflation. If you remember inflation in the 1970s, now we're not going back there, but we're going to be higher than anything we've seen in the past 10 years on inflation. And I think that may even push up interest rates. And then Maddie says, could you share your thoughts regarding the aerospace industry and potential for this sector to rebound? Aerospace, I did an interview with CNN about the space industry saying, oh, we're a defense contractor, we're essential. Well, I wasn't sure about that, but let's talk about airplanes. I think it's going to be a while. I think that people are not going to resume traveling as much. Business travel and pleasure travel as much as so we're not going back to 2019 right away. Maybe we'll get there, but it'll be a few years. Now the two major airline industries, Boeing and Airbus, had long backlogs. And so a little bit of a decline in demand, they could shrug their shoulders. But this is a very big challenge for them. And I'm not quite sure. I think it's going to be tough sledding up, especially for Boeing with its other challenges. I think Airbus probably fare a little bit better. But we're not going to see the big surge in global air travel like we had been anticipating. Do you have any guesses as to what GDP will look like in the third and fourth quarters of 2020, particularly here in the Pacific Northwest? Down? Yeah, down. No problem. In the second quarter, third quarter might be up, but just up from a very low number. For national looks, I suggest going to the Wall Street Journal. They have an economic forecasting survey they do every month, and you can see a wide range. I think it's worth looking not just at one person's forecast, but also the range of opinion. And I was checking the year as a whole for 2020, and the most recent survey averages GDP down 4.9%. I'm doing this from memory, but I think that's it. The high end of the range was about +1. No, the high end I think was -1, somewhere in that neighborhood, and the low end was like -11.3. the 0.3 is what really scared me. So there's a wide range of uncertainty. And I'll tell you, I have been forecasting the economy since I was a young man, and you may have guessed from my appearance, that was a couple of years ago, and this is the biggest challenge I've had. I wouldn't put a lot of credence in anybody's economic forecast, not even my own. Thoughts on the ripples of Boeing's problem? Yeah, those of us who in the Northwest remember that Boeing's difficulties could sink the city of Seattle. And there was the famous billboard of a recession, many recessions ago, saying, "Will the last person to leave Seattle please turn off the lights?" I don't think Boeing's going to have it that bad, but it is going to be a challenge. But there's so much else going on in Seattle through tech that I think that the areas dependent on Boeing are probably going to be just fine. Tyler asks, what's your prediction for the market, V or U curve? Do you see communal living, senior living development, investing going down? So for the market, I'm assuming you're talking stock market, and I think the stock market has said, okay, things are not as good as they used to be, but every time we get good news, the market rebounds. So I have no reason to think that the market, the stock market, needs to be to go up from here. It may be appropriately priced. And then do you see communal living and senior development investment going down? A little bit of cough, but it is not COVID. It's just dry throat. I've been talking for a while. Senior living is an interesting question. The downside, of course, is we've had like half of our deaths from senior living facilities, mostly nursing homes. So those people with the means to receive care at home rather than in a communal setting will probably prefer that, but it's a lot more expensive. So there's a cost challenge there. Where there's a little bit more choice is the active adult, the people who do not need nursing care, the people you see in the ads playing pickleball and enjoying cocktails on the veranda. And I don't think there's any reason for people to worry about that. And it's a safer environment. So I think that the pluses and minuses are about going to offset for active senior living. Daniel asks, what about social distancing in the future, making suburbs more valuable? It occurred after the 2018 pandemic. Do you mean 1918? Fresh air and blue skies. Yeah, I think so. Commuting on a subway or a bus, not nearly as healthy as living in the suburbs and driving in your own car. Michael, what is your take on the U.S. energy industry as the price of West Texas Intermediate crude has decreased significantly? Yeah, oil is going to be cheap so long as we don't use very much. We were producing oil as if the world economy was way up here, and now the world economy is down here. Let me bring those a little together. So we have an excess level of production, so prices are low. You maybe saw the sign, saw the cartoon of the guy paying for gas at the convenience store, and he says, "I just filled up my tank. How much do you owe me?" Well, the negative oil prices were a temporary thing, but the fact is that we are producing too much oil. When the economy rebounds, we'll increase our usage of oil, and the market will return. It'll take probably a few years to work off this period of excess production. So I'm not looking for a return to the old oil prices anytime soon, and we will lose some of our momentum in the shale oil development, but I don't think it's going to be a disaster. Last question, and then I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you about my friends who started a business in the depths of a recession. So last question from James, what is your forecast for interest rates, inflation in 2021? I think that we'll get some inflation, not huge inflation, but definitely some inflation in 2021. But it's not going to be high. But I think that interest rates will still be benefiting from quantitative easing, and the Federal Reserve will be nervous about the economy, and they'll keep interest rates low. So I've got a couple of buddies, Art and Lynn, and one or both of them may even be watching this this webinar. But kind of wild and crazy people. And in I think it was 82, they started a business. 1982, for you youngsters, was the bottom of a double dip recession. What at the time was the worst recession since the Great Depression. It was a really miserable time, and people laughed at him and said, Art, Lynn, you're starting a business in the depths of a recession? How crazy is that? Turned out it wasn't crazy at all, because when you are at the bottom, things are going to turn up. And things turned up as they started their business, and the business grew and it thrived. And one of the things that their experience taught me as I got to know them was that when things are in chaos, the old relationships are not as strong. I said that a little bit ago, and they were able to win customers from competitors who were not taking good care of those customers. So this could be the best time to expand your business or to start a new business. A year from now, 2 years from now, when this is behind us, we're going to see some winners and losers. And instead of trying to pick an industry, I would say focus on your customers, your employees, your suppliers, provide value to all of them. And I certainly hope that you are the business that thrives in the reopening and the economic recovery. Thanks for sharing this, and tell other friends about this series of webinars.